I thought that video was a great introduction to our kind of topic about artificial intelligence when it comes to image creation. And now, hopefully, this will happen in lecture. It'll be much more lively than me talking by myself. But this idea of ethics that's come up, obviously, this should be maybe a bit surprising to all of us to see some of what's happening. It's really just emerging within the last few weeks or months of the news cycle, so to speak. But this idea of there's actually been stories now published where art entries into competitions that have been done by artificial intelligence have won competitions over real artwork. The idea is that all of the images that are created in that combined image are based on other references and other artists. So that idea about what authenticity is of things that get created. And obviously, this is going to have many new implications when we start to talk about architecture. One of the things I wanted to touch on is that this is really going to become very accessible to us very quickly. So it isn't just a rarefied group of people that have access to the technology. And that's kind of one of the amazing things and change in our society is that it used to be in order to do something really creative, for instance, to make architectural drawings and renderings, you needed to have that software on your desktop in order to create that. And now you're able to actually do that because the software exists in the cloud. So accessibility to these kind of tools is going to be the bar much lower, much easier to get in and use and manipulate these kind of tools. And so that has all kinds of implications on both sides of it. Who is actually doing the creating? Up to now, we always think of the architect as being the client provides a stimulus for a design brief, and the architect goes back and creates the beautiful visualization from based on that design brief. But what if the client is creating the visualizations and the architect is responding to those? So it brings up an interesting new set of, I guess, relationships between client and artist. Once again, all kinds of new aspects about it. The idea of what image generator you used because of this idea about each one of them having their own kind of flavor and um, 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 create creative underlying latent image engines that create the actual final image. And so we have like Mid-Journey, Dolly, and Stable Diffusion are like three of the top runners right now. And these are going to become eventually the kind of words that we bandy about when we talk about things like Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and other pieces of creative software. But each one of them develops a unique style, and they will probably have a signature and footprint telling you from which one of those that the concept was developed. And it's really important right now to touch on this idea of prompting. So there are actually people who are actually just creating keyword prompts, understanding how the software works, and helping people to understand what words are needed in order to create the imagery that you might be interested in creating. And so the idea here is that a set of prompts create a whole different set of imagery, but there could be nuances to those prompts that could bring imagery more into alignment with each other. This is a link to Stable Diffusion. If you click on it, I think it will take you to a place where you should be able to actually do some of your own image creation. And we'll get into that more when we're together during lecture. But if not, you could go to the Google link of these slides and or just Google Stable Diffusion, and you should be able to find a link to being able to experiment with that. And I'll elaborate that on a little bit more. And then we have this is just another little tidbit of same things kind of going on. Photo representation with GAN is one, GFP I'm not familiar with, but GAN is generative adversarial networks. So there are ways to actually enhance and modify imagery. So this might be another kind of tool in the toolbox of creatives in order to come up with new kinds of imagery. And now I wanted to start really touching on that idea about, we talked about general imaging, but now actually this idea of artificial intelligence now being directly related to our creation of architectural content. So in this case, this is a really good article from, I think it's Architectural Newspaper. Let me just click onto this Arch paper. I just wanted to scan through just to show you some of these images. Like I said, this is hyperlinked, so you can actually take the time to read through it. It can make, talks about, this is an August 12th article, artificial intelligence can now make convincing images of buildings. And then obviously the real question, is that a good thing? And who's making the images? What is the significance of the images? How are they used? How is it going to affect our idea about what architectural creativity is? So this is Midjourney's text image model example up here, and there's really a whole host of them here. So I just kind of actually wanted to actually slide through these because they're all really quite exciting and remarkable. And I hope you can see these. We'll discuss this more, but see these as great stimulation for our own creative thinking. But they are really kind of mind-blowing. I think if these were presented as student work, it would be hard for anyone to deceive or discern whether this wasn't just an extremely creative individual or the work of an assistive device. I guess I'm going to use the term assistive device now, for lack of a better term, in the creation of conceptual ideas. And you can see the variety is really mind-boggling. And there's some more imagery. Obviously, this just dreamlike kind of streetscape or urban suburban streetscape, just very compelling type of imagery. And some of it does will eventually have kind of a mundane kind of, yeah, I've seen this before, I've seen this 100 different ways. This kind of manipulation of texture over kind of amorphous forms. But for now, it's really, but that's really not the only output here. So that's one look at a article that you might want to click into and spend some time with. Another article, even more organic types of forms. And the question would be, is this going to affect the way we talk about architecture in the future? And so this is all obviously just happening, really kind of a mid-step in your architectural education. And I would assume that it would actually be quite, can I say it, disruptive and uneasy kind of feeling when we see what's actually being created by things that aren't necessarily just humans. They're based on the ideas and concepts of humans. Obviously, that's where the original imagery generated, but these new kind of forms that are created and compilations are being done by a machine. So this is also another link that if you wanted to get into kind of like how the, without actually using the software itself, this takes you through using Midjourney as an architect might. But what's interesting is this idea of using the prompts, and then he goes through and then talks about how you can select images that come from it and then start to refine them, change prompts that go along with them, and come up with more in-depth versions of the ideas. I won't spend a long time with this, but you can see there's a whole idea of exploration and refinement that goes with images. So it is not a, you get one image and that's it. But it is quite, we get into this idea of kind of variations on the same concepts. And so I leave this video for you to explore if you want to click on through to it. Let me see if I have just a couple, and once again, almost this symbiotic architecture, this idea of these really far out things created with natural and organic materials, kind of changing. They've been around forever, but now they're going to become part of the ubiquitous discussion that we have about architecture and whether that's actually going to affect the way we design and think about architecture. This is a link to Replicate, and if you click out through to this, it does have a, for instance, for me, it has a dashboard. And I'm going to show you things that I've done with this. For instance, this is an output run. Actually, that's not the right, it's not the actual output run. Let me go back and see what happened here. Um, there it is. So there's one of the runs that I had done before. They're saved within Replicate at the dashboard. I hope you'll be able to sign into Replicate and be able to explore for free. So if I was to click on to explore right now, let's see if I can manipulate this at all. Well, these are fixed now. Kind of going through this ad hoc, so let me just hit pause for a minute. So I went in to actually try to run one, and it says you've reached your free time limit. To continue running predictions, you need to sign in and enter your credit card. So hopefully you'll get enough time to actually do this a few times. It'll be interesting to see if we get a chance to do that. And if a few of us have success, we'll just do it as a project, and then we'll be able to review what we thought it was like. And I'm going to run through some of the experiences that I had with this so that we can kind of prepare yourself if you get a chance to run this for what you might want to think about as prompts. Okay, so let me didn't need to do that. Let's get back to presentation. So here are some of the outputs that I was able to run. I picked the style of an architect just because it would give a dramatic effect. And then I could find out where it was getting its reference sources from. So this is a Zaha Hadid style of house on a lake. The image over my head is the one that the computer created. And then I would go back and Google that same term for reference images. And you can see there's really no images that look the same, at least not the first ones that pop up. But there are obviously stylistic similarities in that work. But it does have its own kind of really surprising, unique characteristics to it. And I wasn't actually happy with that kind of a form. But so, important note, every time you query it, you're going to get a different piece of architecture. So if you see something that you like or you're interested in, you need to capture it right away because you will not see that image again unless you go through some other kinds of finessing that I'm not even aware of yet. So now I added it to the woods, and this is the project we got. Once again, just a remarkable piece of visual. And then I Googled the same words over here to make sure that there was no direct linkage to other things that were being created, and nothing seemed to appear. Just some experiments. Zaha Hadid four-story office in the city. And I had to say viewed from the street because sometimes I would get interiors of offices. So by saying viewed from the street, I got this. It's obviously way more than 4-story. I probably should have said 4 stories or 4 floors. It probably would have gotten from that prompt a different output. But obviously, working quickly, I didn't even think about what was happening with the language that I was using. And this touches back on that idea of the idea of becoming sophisticated with the use of prompts and asking the right questions. Then I tried to take, and I'm staying with the same architect. I'll move on to another one here in a minute. But now the idea of a church, a religious building, and what would happen. And I'm really not sure that this would be a form. This kind of symmetry doesn't seem like the architect's work, but still, nonetheless, quite an interesting piece of imagery that got created. I put in the term factory, and then we're correlating back to this. And you can, if you look at these images that I searched on Google, you can see some of the same similar influences in the form which is exactly what you would want if you were trying to copy the style of another architect. There you have it. So then I moved on to another architect that's has a recognizable style, Mies van der Rohe style, Office in the Woods, and came up with this. When I Googled Office in the Woods, which I don't think really would be a project that I can think of a Mies project to reference it to, we get the Farnsworth, or not the Farnsworth house, but the, let me see, I'm not sure which, well, that actually is not Mises, but um, that's the Farnsworth house. Actually, no, anyway. Um, then I said, and I probably come back to Mies again, but contemporary building with landscape. Oh, yeah, I do. Mies van der Rohe. Um, and this time I tried to do a Google image search. So I took that exact image and then went back and let Google find similar images. And I couldn't find an identical match to that image, just hoping that that I could find the foibles within it. But you can see similarities in other the images, but ultimately the product is still pretty much its own unique looking vision. Gaudi, obviously another great architect to play around with. Gaudi style building in the woods. I don't know if I spent the time to do an image search here, but this is really quite cool. Um, I thought, the materiality. So I said the Gaudi style building in timber, and I was really pretty remarkably surprised with this type of image that I got back. And then I did a reverse image search to see if there were similarities, and obviously some similarities, but this really seems to be something, once again, an image that seems to stand on its own. Once again, I'm totally amazed. Obviously, we'd have to do a little Frank Lloyd Wright. I was doing Frank Lloyd Wright, and I think I came up with the idea that I wanted to see kind of a unique vision of work that you wouldn't necessarily see. So I used the word townhouse, and once again, viewed from the street. I was just really surprised with this image. Prairie style I used, townhouse viewed from the street. Prairie style, and once again, this is one image that I got using the exact same keywords, right? Another totally different image. So there's no idea that there's only one unique solution to that set of prompts, which can be just amazing. And then once again, another architectural view. But what a rich tool for stimulating ideas about the things that you might want to create based on ideas. So another experiment, Frank Gehry style townhouse, once again viewed from the street to get that kind of a perspective. Maybe a miss some materiality, but really we're starting to see some of the ideas of form. Maybe more compelling or more like his work that you would be expecting. I found this one just kind of neat, not necessarily because of Frank Gehry style, but once again, these images are just really quite amazing. I find this probably one of the ugliest ones that was generated. I think maybe because I said tall house, I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe a bit bland, but still, I added the idea of getting Frank Gehry's metal or titanium type coating systems or cladding systems. And here another, I went to stone, and surprisingly, I really didn't, I guess, understand or be able to articulate stone. Obviously, really a big, heavy lift to combine stone and Frank Gehry's work. And then brick, not necessarily convincing that it's a brick material, but once again, another kind of form. And then I left out materiality, and we come back to this metal, style corporate offices in the village. Trying to use that word village to kind of downscale things so it wasn't metropolis like in the final structure, but still has that, it still seems to kind of be reaching towards that. And then something totally different and unexpected, right? Glass type structure. And then obviously, just obviously, one of the things I want to I ran through these quickly because I thought I had a limited amount of time, so I would just keep changing terms without really giving a whole lot of thought to them. So, once again, that's an overview of what I was able to do within a few minutes, and I found it to really be quite mind blowing. All right. If we're in lecture, I want to talk about how we're going to put our dynamo into the fit of our programming.